Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be kicking off our last minute Black Friday Cyber Monday webinar. I've got the team from QRY, myself, Northbeam, Matt Faring, Jake from Redo, and we're going to kind of walk you through some amazing last minute tips. We are, like a week and a half out from it. So this is definitely one of those times where people are crossing their T's, dotting their I's. Please do not make any major strategic shifts in the next few days. It's now kind of just optimizing what you have. So we're going to walk through from the customer experience standpoint, so everything from acquisition to measurement to post-purchase survey, all the way into returns, and kind of follow from there. I'll introduce myself. I'm Samir, the founder of QRY. We are a paid media agency. So as you can imagine, right now is pretty hectic for all of us. And we're doing some last minute changes. And I'll walk you through some of the stuff that we're implementing and what we're thinking about, and some quick wins that you can kind of put in place right away. So the first one for us is a concept around sale creative. So right now, creative is key, especially on Meta. As you can imagine, you probably have some winning creative things that kind of look awesome and feel good. That's exactly the stuff that we want to lean into and kind of maximize from a day-to-day standpoint. So really looking at how are we thinking about that creative, and then how are we using that for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So a lot of times we'll have evergreen campaigns still running through the holidays, but how do you take some of that high performing evergreen creative and turn it into a Black Friday, Cyber Monday campaign as well? So copying and actually running Black Friday, Cyber Monday creative overlaid on your evergreen is really valuable. So if you've got one ad that's just been killing it and it has either high engagement or high purchase volume, definitely skinning it with your Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal and rerunning it is a great way to just get additional creative into the mix. So that's one that has been really big for us. And the other key piece of that too is don't only look at your highest converting ads, look at your highest engagement ads. So sometimes those high engagement ads are earlier on in the meta sequencing flow, and adding an offer to it actually might drive it into one of your highest converting ads. So take a kind of look at that matrix there for sure. Our second thing that we do pretty consistently across every Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and have had to use almost every Black Friday, Cyber Monday over the last 5 years, is this concept of primary offer and fallback offer. So strategically, what we'll try and do is have a primary offer that will run on Black Friday into Cyber Monday. And then on Cyber Monday, either we've got a plan A or plan B, depending on how the brand is running against their targets for the month. So if you're on track, great, run your plan A, you feel good about things. But let's say a competitor went deeper than you anticipated, and now you need to have a plan B ad live. If you wait to make that plan B over the holidays, you will probably get caught in the review process and not actually be able to get that ad live until it's too late. So traffic those ads, have them in place, especially if you're doing CTV. CTV is notorious for having really long approval cycles. Have them all approved. Do not launch them unless you absolutely need to. But having them in the platforms pre-approved just makes your life a lot easier and a lot quicker. Obviously, be really organized. Don't by mistake run plan B when you meant to run plan A. Definitely adds a level of risk, but you just need to be really organized there. A third strategy that we've implemented a lot is around gifting audiences. Not everyone has the logistics to do gift message or gift wrapping and things like that. And so there's a customer experience element of that. That's fantastic. I hate wrapping gifts. So anyone that will wrap a gift for me, I'm here for. But the beauty of that, if you do have logistics where you are getting gift wrapped items, that is a gift purchase, and that becomes an audience set. So that's really valuable for moments like this, where you have Black Friday, you've got like Father's Day, Mother's Day, birthdays, all of that kinds of stuff. So gifting audiences are key. But let's say you don't have that. You don't have the capacity for someone to check mark that this is a gift or anything else. How can you kind of get to these gifting audiences without kind of going through that? We recommend looking at your billing address against your shipping address. And that can give you a perspective on maybe this is a gift. It's not perfect, but it's directional, as well as if people have bought against different categories that are mutually exclusive. So if I bought a men's shirt and a women's dress, I'm probably purchasing for more than myself, and I might be primed for a gifting audience. So kind of trying to use these signals to identify audience types within it is really valuable. The other one from a gifting audience standpoint is if you know you've got product sets that are prime gifting products, $20, $50. They're low AOV, but they're good stocking stuffers or Secret Santa gifts or like little gifts that you would get your friends. Those are great product catalogs, like product feed ads to run, because those are going to be things people are going to be searching for right now because they have certain gift like cost thresholds. So think about like I'm going to gift for my spouse, that's fine, but I'm also buying gifts for my brother-in-law and my friends, and those all have amounts that I want to spend. I'm not spending $200 on my brother-in-law as much as I love him. I'm going to be spending probably $50 or $60. So those products are that product type is right for those kinds of those targets. The last thing we're doing on our end, and this is for QRY clients, our tool Athena is an AI ML platform for actually identifying core opportunities. So being able to go through our tool set and saying which audiences tend to spike around Black Friday, Cyber Monday historically, what creative has done well historically. We've been able to kind of pull all those out and double down on a lot of that, as well as really identifying what anomalies we commonly see during sale periods, because we can look back at Labor Day, we can look back at Memorial Day, we can look at July 4th as indicators of what is likely to happen on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, just at a larger scale. So we can kind of look back at our anomalies. We know, CPM spikes in these channels. Let's plan for that. We need to have a click-through rate of at least X to make this worthwhile. So we can kind of have a perspective on all of that ahead of time. So we're really making sure our math is dialed in just before we get into Black Friday, Cyber Monday is really key. And I know there's a lot of like talk around hour to hour optimizations and like minute by minute optimizations. I think that that's great, but then you're kind of pushing against the grain. I do think the brands that are going to win are not the ones that are changing things every hour. They're the ones that had a system in place, knew what their tops and bottoms are, and were working against that versus trying to push and add noise to an already noisy day. So that's kind of what we're doing on the QRY side and what we're really excited about. I'll hand it over to Braden to talk through measurement, because I think that that's a great kind of segue from, okay, we launched campaigns. How do we make sure that they're actually working?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Samir. And I really want to kind of anchor to that last part that you mentioned there around the hourly thing. It's a huge topic of discussion amongst our client base for sure. And I think most of the folks who are out there are, for better or for worse, always going to be on Black Friday, Cyber 5, whatever you want to call it. And to that end, I think what we educate everybody on is establishing benchmarks and targets for your ads, your tops and bottoms, if you will, going into that weekend. And what we see inside Northbeam is folks who are relying on our benchmarking feature are able to actually kind of take a step back, even though they might be more active in their accounts than they normally would be. And they're able to say, okay, for this ad that we launched, we know what that ceiling is that we can push it to, right? Inside Northbeam, it's super easy to see those thresholds. And you can kind of see that green, yellow, and red, if you will, right? So literally, that's kind of what it looks like in the platform. You'll see a green indicator for when you're meeting or exceeding that benchmark. You'll see a yellow for, hey, there's a little bit of caution to be had here. And then you'll see a red for whenever you're below that benchmark target. So it's important to hold yourself to that. And then I'd also add one more thing regarding target setting is understanding the delayed impact in revenue, right? So a lot of this spend that we're going to do during this time period, it's actually going to show forth later on in time. And so when our benchmarking tool does its calculation in Northbeam, we're taking into account what we call conversion lag, or that delayed impact, into account as well. So when you're looking at your hourly targets or your one-day targets, they are having that factored in terms of saying, okay, we might see that conversion lag come in a 7 to 14 day window, maybe even longer for higher AOV products, right? So that's one thing. The second thing I think that we're most commonly educating folks on is you might have recently seen our release of clicks and deterministic views at Northbeam. What that is, in simple terms, is prior to clicks and deterministic views, we were relying solely on click data, as was pretty much every measurement partner out there. And now we've actually been able to develop partnerships with most ad platforms where they're sending us log level impression data, which allows us to, instead of model the impact that view through might be having on your ads this Black Friday, we're able to deterministically assign that credit or a weight towards how much a view had on a purchase journey. So case in point might be you launched a meta ad, maybe the performance looks poor in platform, but you know that that ad is maybe sitting more top of funnel than it maybe all the other ads in your account. Maybe it's unbranded, maybe it's just kind of less polished than everything else. It's typically going to have quote unquote worse performance. And so we know intrinsically that there is a view happening on that ad. Someone is failing to click on that ad, but is later recalling the brand or the product and converting downstream, whether it be on branded search or maybe direct or organic, what have you. And so now that purchase journey, whereas we before didn't have eyes into that, now the industry has deterministically assigned credit towards that view and how much it's actually driving purchases downstream. So it's pretty impactful. It's something that our biggest customers are utilizing. And I think in terms of where everyone needs to be coming in from during this Black Friday, Cyber Monday, even if you're not utilizing CDV or you're not on Northbeam, just take into consideration the fact that there might be user journeys that are maybe previously misunderstood, and understand that your ads are having a lot more impact than you might see on the surface. So I'll leave it with that. And Samir, I'll pass it back to you.
Amazing. All right. So next in our journey, we're going to chat with Matt from Fairing. So let's talk post-purchase survey. So we got them to purchase. Now what?
Yeah, incredible. So a few things just to kick off. You mentioned the season is now starting. Officially, we're actually starting. Historically, it's 10 days before BFCM is really when we see that increase. We measure it at being about 25% above baseline is when we say kind of it's starting, and that's always 10 days before. So that is today. So good timing as far as everyone jumping on this webinar. A few other things just to pull from our larger sample of data at Fairing is the first, just thinking about new versus returning customers. So kind of going into next weekend, I would definitely look at historical data, your year-over-year comps for new versus returning buyer behavior changes. So across our whole sample of customers, you'd think there'd be a pretty large variance of like net new customers being acquired through BFCM. It's actually only about a 10% swing from, call it 30 days before BFCM. So definitely not as much of like this bifurcation of like all of these new customers buying. A lot of those consumers are just people that are current customers of yours who are coming back to get deals. So think about that obviously as you're allocating spend and kind of optimizing on the day-to-day basis. Braden mentioned consideration windows. Fairing does a beautiful job of doing that. There's a question in our template bank as far as, hey, when did you first hear about us? That's a really good one to run to start to understand, hey, are we actually exposing a lot of these customers in September or in October who are then buying through BFCM? So if you're optimizing, let's say for a shorter click or view through window, you're going to kind of miss the ROI that was driven by that spend in previous months. So really just starting to get a baseline, understand how that changes over time is arguably more important. Hey, are these customers, is it taking a little bit longer? Are they waiting for deals? We know they all are. That's kind of why the BFCM deals really start to, every year, it kind of moves back a couple days or a week or so to try to capture and convert those users faster. So definitely recommend setting up that question just to understand that exposure window. The next thing to hit on is really around lifetime value. So looking at all of our customers, there is about a 20% decrease in LTV for customers that are acquired during the BFCM window. So that's kind of on the user level. There's definitely some gift giving. So that number arguably might not be as high because you're kind of not able to track those users who are gifted a product and then go on and buy that same product in the future. But just something to note as you're thinking about that kind of ROAS targets and extrapolating this out to the rest of the year. If you use Fairing or honestly any other survey tool, you could marry the LTV data from historical BFCM weekends and look at kind of, hey, when do these customers start getting profitable? And definitely recommend everyone doing that exercise. At least in our data set, we've seen some customers have a higher LTV through this weekend, some have lower. Again, the average is about 20% less. So those are the first two. The last thing to just hit on here is really around gift giving. So we obviously know it's that time of year. We do see a massive spike in gift giving off of the average. It really drops pretty aggressively in January amongst any other time, kind of caps out around 15% of orders and then drops sub 5 for a few weeks, which is, I guess, to be expected. But when thinking about utilizing your post-purchase survey, the question, is this a gift? There's probably arguably not a better time to run that. You could do a ton of modeling in the future to understand gift givers. You can compare that data to your word of mouth data to understand that user segment. And then, arguably most importantly, taking that kind of deterministic user level, is this a gift or not data, piping it to your ESP, to Klaviyo, or whatever tool you're using, and then being able to personalize those post-purchase experiences a bit better for gift givers and not gift givers. So we've seen a lot of success and kind of ROI in those flows, let's say specifically in Klaviyo, where you start to talk to that user in a bit more personalized manner, not, hey, how is the item you purchased, but hey, how did the user, your friend, like the gift that you gave them? Those are kind of just 3 tips on our end as far as setting up the question stream. And just to recap here, exposure. So, hey, when did you first hear about us running that? If you have historical data, you can kind of analyze all of this in that sense. The second one is understanding kind of LTV realities with users that you're acquiring this weekend or next weekend rather. And the last one is trying to kind of bifurcate of like, who are these gift givers? How much are they worth long term? And how should we be talking to them differently?
I love the gifting process and thinking around that. So anything that we can kind of do there is key right now. Amazing, Jake. So bring us home with what happens with returns and kind of where Redo fits into there and some recommendations there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's still a little bit of time as it relates to returns. So obviously we are in the thick of it now as far as sales goes, but we typically don't see the influx in returns until about mid-December, but usually like January, February. So you still have some time, but returns are typically one of those things that aren't really top of mind right now, but you'll definitely pay the price or reap the benefits come next year, like typically January and February. So a couple of things that we're focusing on with our brands as they're gearing up for peak season to retain these customers is, one, focusing on personalization and how personalization during the returns process can drive retention. 2 is we're talking with them a lot about return fraud and return abuse. Obviously, we want to like retain the customer, but we want to retain the right customers and want to catch customers that may be trying to abuse the system. And when is the right time to automate the returns process versus have, a little bit more of like a manual touch and have your teams get involved and reach out to the customer. So jumping into like the personalization side of things, most brands typically have a one-size-fits-all experience as a customer is making a return, but there's also a huge opportunity to personalize the returns experience. I mean, Matt even talked about this a little bit in some of the things they're doing with surveys. Segmentation is a really easy thing to implement in the returns process. Just by segmenting out who is this customer and what are they returning, have we worked with them before, and trying to give unique experiences just based on the segmentation. The lifetime value of a customer who opts into an exchange versus a refund is almost double. So any efforts that can be implemented there to retain the customer are definitely worth a brand's time. So a few things that we're doing with brands to personalize the returns experience. So first thing is treating first-time customers differently, whether it's a larger bonus to make an exchange or offering a bonus in general, like, hey, here's an additional 10-15% in spending power if you make an exchange, and really trying to focus on those first-time customers that you may have not interacted with previously that are making a purchase for the first time. Like, we definitely want to put more time and attention into those types of customers. Same thing, but for customers that are opting in for a refund, right? So if it's either via email or just during the returns process, if you're using a software for that, identifying customers that are leading towards a refund and giving them a significantly higher bonus to make an exchange. And then last thing is trying, if you can, like flag VIP customers, right? Like give them a smoother experience are some of the things that we're doing right now with brands from a personalization standpoint, and hopefully not treating customers, in a one-size-fits-all experience. Point number 2, return fraud is a thing. It's unfortunate, but it definitely is a thing that we are talking a lot about with brands. Whether brands realize it or not, there are forums and Reddit pages and things online where people are hacking and manipulating their policies. And so it will be a real thing come January, February. And the last thing you want is to think you've got a form of revenue or you've got revenue and you get the item back and you issue a refund just to get an item back that you can't even sell to begin with. And so more just be aware of that. It is a tricky thing to track and a tricky thing to solve for. Redo does have some very intricate ways within which we've been working with brands to solve for this, whether it's tracking same name, different address, or same address, different name and email. We can do things even down to the tracking the package that's being sent back and seeing if a customer has tried to manipulate the label. So I won't spend a ton of time here, more focus on some of the positive things with retaining customers, but that is definitely something that we're focusing on with brands, is trying to eliminate return fraud and return abuse. And then last thing, this is a busy time of year, is a time where it feels like everyone's hair is on fire, but there is a time and place to still have that manual touch with a customer that could turn them into not only a lifetime customer, but a raving fan. And so look for those opportunities. Obviously, you want to focus on opportunities where you have the highest ROI or upside. So similar to like the personalization talking points, figure out ways to segment customers. If it's a high AOV order or purchase, right, or a high dollar amount, let's see if we can flag that customer and have more of a human interaction with them, whether it's even a phone call or just an email exchange where they know that someone's on the other side. So flagging opportunities where your CX team can jump in and have that one-to-one interaction can go a long way. Obviously, like most of these opportunities are going to be automated, and that's the point of it, but there are opportunities to still have that manual interaction and intervention. So in summary, the goal of all of this is everyone is working hard to acquire customers over the next 2 months and to drive sales. Let's do whatever we can come January, February to retain what has gone into like the next 2 months. And if you can find ways to personalize the returns experience, it will definitely have an impact in terms of retention. Let's be mindful of return fraud and return abuse and see if you can put in ways to track that, and then figure out ways to still have like a manual touch during the returns process. But wish everyone best of luck in figuring out the next 2-3 months and seeing what everyone can do. So Samir, I'll pass it over to you.
Returns starts pretty rapidly, I'm sure, for you guys. And how far along do you see it? Like, does it go all the way into January, or like, what's the, I know return windows can be anything from 14 to 30 to 60 days. Like,
Yeah.
where do you see it spike? Where do you see it ultimately happen?
Yeah, good question. Most brands that we work with, and this is completely up to the discretion of the brand, but most brands that we work with do have an extended return policy or window to give customers the adequate amount of time, whether it's a gift or to try on the item or to get through the holidays. So you definitely do see returns start in December, but if you just think about the seasonality and the timing, like most returns are going to really, really spike in January, right? And so going back to some of the first points, like there is still time to optimize this. Obviously, like you are going to see that starting now, but it will really, really go and start to peak in January, right? So we typically see most of this come early January and bleed into a little bit of February, but January is for sure your peak.
Do you have any tips or tricks for keeping that customer, so that way January just doesn't become this bloodbath? It's like a way to activate it.
Yeah, speaking specifically to Redo, so we actually have a separate portal or flow specifically for gifts. So it does two things. One is it tracks the customer's information, but then also two is we actually will allow the receiver of the gift to make the return without notifying the gift giver.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's also some benefit there if it's a family member or spouse or friend, you don't want to let them know that you might be returning the item or at least exchanging it if they guessed your sizing correctly. So it won't ping the gift giver. And then obviously, to your point, you're able to start tracking customer information of someone you may not have interacted with directly.
Oh, that's really, really cool. Brayden, I'm going to jump over to you on the Northbeam side. As people are looking at channels, and obviously Google Meta are the two beasts of kind of where things are going right now, what other channels are you seeing really pop up? Like, where are you kind of looking at and thinking are going to be kind of outsized winners of Black Friday, Cyber Monday for this year?
Yeah, I can speak a lot to that. The one that's been top of mind for myself, just looking at the data and being so, intimately close to it, is we did see a pullback, or what we call a softening of metrics leading up to BFCM, which is expected. We do expect advertisers to go ahead and start to reduce spend, gearing up for that peak period. However, one channel that didn't see any kind of reduction was YouTube ads. So it's obviously a smaller percentage of budget, but we didn't see it falter at all in terms of percent of wallet leading up to BFCM. So that indicates that at least most folks are interested in maintaining their investment there, not necessarily scaling it, but maintaining it in its current capacity to support that top of funnel, right? And then I think two other channels are worth calling out from then forward, which would be Axon, obviously launched in October of 24. We saw it be very competitive and comparable to some of your pillar channels, and it's continuing to drive that same level of comparability continuing into BFCM. I would say, like everything, monitor your CPMs, monitor your net new traffic to site, monitor all your KPIs you'd normally monitor. We try to be less in favor of one platform over another and understand that every platform fits somewhere uniquely in the overall media mix. And our most sophisticated customers understand that and are advertising amongst a multitude of channels. The last thing I'd also call out is just around TikTok. A lot of folks, I think, last year viewed TikTok as couldn't crack the nut, right? Couldn't really figure out how to get it to scale to the levels that we thought it could. And what we've seen is that TikTok shops really changed the game for TikTok this year. And continuing into Q4 in 2026, we do expect to see TikTok continue to rise up. And I can say that conversion rates for sure are explosive for TikTok shops and TikTok as a channel. So that's one to watch. I think if you tried it in the past and you kind of called it quits and you haven't really touched it since last year, it's worth another look, maybe seeing what you can do in terms of building out relationships there.
We are pretty bullish on YouTube. We did not pull down spend at all on YouTube, and that's been consistent for us. And it's every time we run an incrementality test, it always comes out really strong. So we're really excited about that. And then the other one that's been a unique one for us that we've seen really good results with is Reddit also. So doing like paid AMAs and things like that, we don't see the results always in the ads itself, but even the fact that the ads show up in LLMs becomes really valuable too. So it's a little bit of like a sneaky way of getting into kind of helping your generative engine optimization as well. Matt, I have a question for you, just kind of as Black Friday, Cyber Monday comes around. This is probably the time where brands are getting the largest volume of purchases. So it's the highest, number of post-purchase surveys. It's probably a really valuable time to gather a lot of data. What 2 or 3 questions, or even one question that you think every brand needs to add just kind of coming into Black Friday, Cyber Monday? If this was like the one thing that you ask all of these customers, what's the one thing?
Before I answer that, I just wanted to say one thing on the channel side of things. And kind of just echoing what Brayden mentioned. So, spoken a lot about gift giving. One thing that we noticed last year, especially with Axon, AppLovin, was that gift giving on a per channel basis is actually like there's a pretty wide delta between channels. So, just to call out Axon in particular, let's say average share of gifts was around 15%. In December, they were closer to 25%. So like 34% higher than our baseline. Pretty insane delta. I think a function of that is like the audience on mobile games is actually doing a lot of the gift giving. So you could kind of use your survey data to kind of triangulate that to say, hey, are there different channels that actually have better performance when we use gifting messaging, because that is kind of the audience who's actually doing the buying. So just wanted to echo that. Also very similar on YouTube, consistently year over year. It's pretty wild. As far as questions to ask, so previous to next week, the one question that I would recommend everyone get live literally right now is a CRO related question. So you can add this kind of anywhere into the stream or your survey tool, but questions like how's your shopping experience type questions, to try to see if you can like pull out if there's any like literally conversion issues. Like I couldn't add to cart on Chrome on my iPhone or something. So that's usually the most under leveraged but easiest to implement question into the stack that we would definitely recommend. The second one, and kind of not counting the ones I mentioned before around gift giving or conversion lag, the second one would be really around personalization. So for certain verticals, this is easier to do than others. But a question like, how would you describe yourself? If you have pre-built personas, asking that question, and then again, looking at LTV data, looking at kind of the pivot out of that is super helpful. It's really good downstream. If you send that to Klaviyo, it gives your CRM team like this very easy segmentation, again, bottoms up deterministic data point to build segments out of. Those would probably be the two that I would definitely highlight kind of heading into next week. It depends how kind of aggressive you want to get with the number of questions. We typically recommend 3 to 5, just because after that you start to get a little bit of consumers will let you know when there's too many questions. So that's typically where we start. But if you're thinking about your kind of PPS strategy in a whole, we group everything into 5 categories. So you have attribution, you have personalization, you have just general research, so demographic, psychographic type questions, age, gender, etc. You have NPS, and then you have CRO. So typically when you're choosing to set up which questions, you kind of probably want to dabble a little bit in each bucket.
Yeah, I'm going to add my favorite that doesn't get added very often into this, but what do you wish we sold to kind of help with product development in the future? Because I think, as marketers, we all sit here and go, okay, we're going to win this over the weekend with product, with marketing. But the reality is that without a great product, every weekend is not really successful. So anything we can do to help on the product side is always great.
Exactly.
Guys, I really want to thank you guys for jumping on and doing this. I think that there was a lot of really valuable information here. And to everyone that is going through Black Friday, Cyber Monday, good luck. It is a stressful period, but also a lot of fun. And I know that we will all be successful. So thank you guys for joining us.